Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The LSU Tigers continue the momentum coming out of the transfer portals. Former Liberty wide receiver CJ Daniels expected to commit to LSU. And Dill, LSU probably didn't need to grab a wide receiver in the transfer portal. They go out and get one of the top wide receivers available in CJ Daniels, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns in 2023. But more importantly, I think CJ Daniels fits like a glove in terms of what they want to do with their wide receivers in this offense, attacking that deeper third, working vertically. Very, very good fit. Want to do two things. One, talk about CJ Daniels, what he brings to this LSU offense, and more importantly, have a little bit of a conversation regarding some other positions we would like to see LSU address in the transfer portal, specifically on that defensive side of the football. I've been reading the message boards, reading your guys' comments in the comment section. Like, there's still some work to be done from a personnel standpoint heading into 2024. We'll talk about positions, potential players for LSU to target. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and a shout out to the LSU fans. I mean, this has been a program, whether it's flipping five-star Dominic McKinley, landing Bryce Underwood, going out and hiring Blake Baker, or what they're doing in the portal. It's been a blast of a program to talk about over the last couple of weeks. You guys have shown a ton of support. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dale, I'm going to give you the T-box here. I want to start with CJ Daniels. What's he bringing to this LSU offense here?
I think the big thing is the fit. And you kind of look at what LSU wants to do offensively. They push the ball down the field as aggressively as I think anyone in the country. I think every wide receiver on the field is expected to be able to do it. You see the guys, they line up in the slot. They like to throw that slot fade in there. They like everyone to be able to get vertical. And even like a guy like Aaron Anderson, I know he's only 5'8", but really can run, stretch the field. It's just, I think everyone on LSU, it's very much expected that you can get downfield. CJ Daniels is perfect for that. He is a big-time playmaker when the ball's in the air and really does do a good job taking it.
That's what I want to hammer home. Like 19.4 yards per catch for CJ Daniels in 2023. And you watch the film, like this is a guy that he thrives vertically down the field. More importantly, he thrives with the football in the air. And you remember like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thompson, how talented they were at tracking footballs and adjusting their body, the body control that they had. I mean, CJ Daniels, I'm not saying he's going to go out and be a Malik Neighbors, but a guy that has some of those attributes. Like when that football's in the air, not only does he have a physical and big frame at 6'2", 200 pounds, he has that body control and skill set to go track the football and make a play. And you look at this LSU offense in 2023, this is a disgusting stat. 10.8 yards per pass attempt. I mean, that was by far, I don't even know if there's another team over 10 yards. They were almost at 11 per pass attempt. This is a team that wants to work vertically down the field. CJ Daniels kind of fits exactly what they want to do. And more importantly, this was an LSU wide receiver that didn't necessarily need a wide receiver because we all know the talent that they have. But maybe you wanted a veteran guy that's done it at the college football level at a consistent basis to add to a guy like Kyron Lacey, Chris Helton, Shelton Sampson, a guy that I'm extremely excited about in that 2023 class. I think you're adding a veteran wide receiver that could have gone to the NFL had he wanted to, and kind of provide that veteran presence in a wide receiver room that's super talented, but a little bit young.
And that's the thing. You look, they're pretty much losing such a big chunk of what they did. And I know Kyron Lacey coming back is huge because he was super productive. And especially if his hands just get a little cleaner and he drops a few less balls, like he really starts to turn into that really dynamic, really good wide receiver for them, I think. And then you pair him up with Daniels and then see who kind of wins out with those young guys and gets on the field. You know somebody's going to be really good out from that class underneath because there's 4 or 5 really talented players.
I got a guy to throw off for LSU fans. Now, I think the LSU fans who follow the recruiting trail pretty heavily familiar with him. Trey'Dez Green. Kind of that jumbo slot. I don't know if you're going to see Trey'Dez Green line up in line as much. I think they're going to use him as that jumbo wide receiver. You talk about a guy that can win those 50-50 balls, and they're not 50-50 balls with Trey'Dez Green. They're 80-20, a big body that is a basketball background. You talk about being comfortable with the football in the air. I mean, Trey'Dez Green is that guy. Now, CJ Daniels added in. This offense is going to be dynamite. It's going to be one of the better offenses that we see in 2024. Dill, on the defensive side of the football, I still do think, I mean, Blake Baker, Bo Davis, Kevin Peoples coming in, that already makes me feel more confident that the product is going to get better. Just a better coaching staff, because that was a disaster in 2023. There's no way around that. But there are still some personnel concerns that you probably would like to see LSU address in the transfer portal. I'll ask you first, where would you like to talk about for these LSU Tigers?
I mean, honestly, the only one that jumps out to me is that defensive tackle spot, and specifically that D tackle spot, because I think they have a couple really good young guys on the edge, especially with Womack in Jalen or Jackson Howard. Sorry, I was blanking on him for a second, but I should like those two guys look like they have a lot of promise. I think should have good years this year. But that D tackle spot, that's the one you kind of wonder about, and frankly, you kind of look almost at Dominic McKinley as almost. Is he going to have a huge role in this, and why was his commitment so important? I think he's going to play a lot this year.
I think Dominic McKinley for sure can play a lot. But if you're LSU and knowing you're going to have such a phenomenal offense, you don't want to go into 2020. You don't want to go into SEC play having to rely on a true freshman all along the line of scrimmage to kind of be a contributor, because you want to have some veteran guys that you know what you're getting. The first guy I want to talk about in the conversation here, Dill, is – Jamari Caldwell was a name that I thought would be a perfect fit for LSU. He ends up committing to Oregon late last night. I've been in my bag. Like, I've spent a decent amount of my Saturday today looking at interior defensive linemen for LSU to go after. And there's just it's sparse. Like, a lot of those guys are committed to other schools. There's not that many names. So one, we're going to talk about Dennis Briggs, but I wouldn't be surprised to see LSU. They got Sean Washington coming from the JUCO ranks. You have Dominic McKinley coming in as a true freshman, doesn't get there till the summer. I wonder if Brian Kelly goes through spring camp and says, all right, let's see what we have. And then when that second portal window comes, that's when they get aggressive for this defensive line, because quite frankly, there's not that many names still available that would be elevating this LSU defensive line. A guy I want to talk about, though, is Dennis Briggs Jr., and this is a guy that has played a ton of football. He's going into his 7th year of college football, right? 6'4", 290 plus pounds. He's not going to be a game wrecker for LSU, but you talk about a reliable guy that's played a decent amount of Power 5 football. Dennis Briggs Jr. would be a name that if I'm LSU, just to add some depth, to add some bodies, would probably be a name I'm considering.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like, I don't suspect this unit's going to be that, like, dominant part of their defense, but you need it to be tough. I think you need it to be like at least physical, and that's kind of what Dennis Briggs gives you. Not like a wildly dynamic player. He's been fairly productive, frankly, for most of it, or when he's been healthy, obviously.
Yes.
But a guy who I just don't think you need to worry about. Will play tough, be it kind of sit in the middle and just not be
do
alive.
His job. And I will say one thing I'll push back on you and say, from a personnel standpoint, it's not like we were talking about this team last year with Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo coming in. Bo Davis did a phenomenal job at Texas. I wonder if you just see, like a new face, a new voice in that room, that could massively elevate the play. Dill, we are Michigan fans. Mike McDonald comes into this Michigan and suddenly like the play gets better. Like, the personnel didn't change from 2020 to 2021 for Michigan. The coaching staff changed and you saw some production. And so I wonder if, Blake Baker, Kevin Peoples, Bo Davis, you maybe just get a little bit more progression from that unit as well. But Dennis Briggs Jr. on that defensive line, just another capable, competitive body to bring in. Probably a name I would look at.
Well, and that's why I kind of say it, because, again, I think if you kind of look at this other part of the defense, if they're coached well and they play up to their potential, kind of the part that surrounds this defensive tackle, which is the only group you look at and is like, well, who's going to be the guy in this unit? Because there's guys in all the other units. You just mentioned the 2 young guys on the edge, a bunch of really young linebackers I think you'd like a Whit Weeks, and then a handful of secondary guys who they were able to keep out of the portal who are all really talented, I think, just in a scheme that really did them no favors and with a coaching staff that did them no favors. So I think, again, I look at this LSU defense, I think it could be massively improved for the main reason you mentioned is that just when you get coaches who are really good at what they do, like a Blake Baker, like a Bo Davis, like that type of guy, that's huge, obviously. But again, that's just why you're looking at that D tackle spot. Like, you just need it to be solid. It doesn't need to be great. I think there's a lot of other.
You just need some depth. You need some capable bodies in there. The last name, and I think LSU fans would riot if we didn't talk about this name, so we have to. And I think it'd be a great addition, right? This secondary room needs. If the more competition, the more talent you can get in this room, the better. You got to talk about Des Ricks, a guy that didn't play much for Alabama as a true freshman, mean, Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terry Arnold, two guys that are going to go in the top 20 of the NFL draft. That's nothing to knock on Des Ricks. This is a box checker, right? There's a reason he was a former 5-star in the 2024 class, reclassified in 2023, but still a top 40 national prospect, 6'1", 180 pounds, long physical frame, 4.5 40 coming out of high school, 39-inch vert. You talk about physical traits that can be elite at the SEC level. I mean, Des Ricks has that written all over it. If you're LSU, I mean, that has to be a call that when you see that name officially hit the portal, I mean, you're making that call today.
And frankly, that'll be the interesting part because, again, we're kind of looking now, does the portal look a little sparse for at certain positions on defense? Perhaps, but I mean, with that Alabama coaching shakeup and with what's going to happen at Washington, I'm sure a couple guys are going to leave Alabama. It's so different when a guy like Nick Saban leaves, who so many guys just go to play for him. They're not going to necessarily play for Alabama because he was such an institution there and such a legend. I mean, I just think you're going to see more. You're going to see a handful of Bama kids go. I'd be surprised if you didn't see a couple of kids from Washington go. So I don't think the portal's done. And again, I'd be really surprised if Brian Kelly and the staff don't really make a run at some of these guys like a Des Ricks or some of these other just hopefully defensive tackles.
In my note sheet, that's the last point I wanted to talk about is looking at that defensive line in the transfer portal and saying, all right, there aren't a ton of names that are popping out at me for the LSU Tigers right now. And I have written down defensive line targets, ... Bama. Like, you know, Bama has the guys, and there are going to be a few of those names hit the transfer portal for the exact reason you said, right? We committed to play for Nick Saban. He's no longer there. We want to kind of test their options. They have that 30-day window. LSU, they got to have an assistant refreshing the portal. When you see a Bama defensive lineman hit, like, those are the type of bodies that you want LSU to consider bringing in just from a pure depth standpoint. So, yeah.
And just because they're so close, it's like maybe if you kind of knew you were going to be a 6-6 team, it's like, well, if we play a little young at defensive tackle, who cares? No. But this LSU team is just, it doesn't feel that far away. It obviously wasn't far away last year. There's a reason the whole defensive staff got fired, and it was a very good reason. So, again, this team's close. I think if you look, there's a lot of really good young players you like, and if they take steps, you kind of look at this defense, especially, man, it can take some jumps. You have no worries about the offense. I mean, if good D tackles hit, like a Dennis Briggs obviously just hit recently, or another guy out of Bama, Washington, wherever, Michigan, who knows? I mean, I'd be really surprised if LSU wasn't one of the first calls, and it's an attractive option because it's LSU, and B, you got a lot of opportunity to compete at least.
That's a great point, right? I mean, you got to play for a premier program, a lot of competition to go play and compete for what is a college football playoff spot, SEC title, national title. That's what we have right now. I think that, again, especially with what's going on at Bama, like, it is going to be a very fluid situation. There's going to be some names. We'll continue to update you guys. I wanted to hop on, talk about CJ Daniels, talk about where we think this LSU program can improve. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. All the support means the world to the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.